another episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now. Today, this episode is going to be extremely interesting. If you're a researcher, if you're someone that cares about your family tree, if you're someone that's looking into where you actually came from, this is the episode for you. I am honored and privileged to introduce to you Tiffany Green Abdullah. She is the COO for a family-owned architectural firm. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. So, as we embrace upon this time, everybody's talking about Ancestry.com and talking about where do I come from and what does it mean. I'd love for you to share with the audience your story of where your efforts came and why you were looking for secrets behind your family.
Whew, it's real. Ancestry is really real for me because I've found family members through Ancestry. And so where I am right now, I am in the process of finishing my book, which is called The Bean Pie, 4 Generations of Faith, Family, Forgiveness, and Fortitude. It's a lot, but I couldn't figure out which one to leave out. So in the process of writing the book, it initially started with me having an interest in my great-great aunt, Daisy, who, based on the folklore in my family, I always have to air quote this, created the bean pie. The bean pie that is the Black Muslim delicacy dessert. We eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it could be any and all those things. So the idea of researching started with my interest in her. And it broadened to really include my grandmother, who she raised, because my grandmother's mother, my great-great-grandmother, great-grandmother, passed away when my grandmother was 3 years old. And men didn't raise kids back then, so you went with an auntie. And then that opened up questions around my mother. And then, of course, there's my own story. And I just turned 45 2 weeks ago. So
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But how I got to Ancestry was really trying to find Aunt Daisy. And then it just oh my goodness, it's crazy right now because I have 260 people in my family tree in Ancestry. And I was able to not only find her, find all her family, but find my father's side and going all the way back to probably the first census, 1860, I think, or 1850, 1860s. I've been able to find family all the way back on both sides, which has been, it's just amazing just to say their names out loud, and just ask, specifically ancestors help me unlock whatever secrets are out there and guide me in the writing of this book, which may need to be multiple books. At this point.
So what you say you found the hidden secrets in your family. What was, and you were looking for your grandmother, and it brought questions about your mother, etc. Tell us what those secrets are and what the what you were looking for.
So my mother, in interviewing my mother, and she's 60, she just turned 68. And people of that generation are very quiet about what they went through, right? If they went through stuff in the civil rights movement, et cetera. So I, just wanted to I started interviewing my mother about the book, and she was very reluctant to tell me anything. And at the same time, my son, who's 10, he always asked me stories about my childhood. Mama, tell me about when you were a kid. What were you doing? What was your favorite thing? What did you watch on TV? What did you do? What did you like to do? And that made me curious about my mother because I was I don't know anything about you. I know you're my mother. I know top level bullet points, right? But I wanted to know her as a woman, as a 44-year-old woman at the time, and my mom's 67. I'm I really want to know you as a person. What were you like as a child? What did you like to do? And it took her a few sessions to begin to open up. And one of the things that came out related to being a secret was about my grandfather, who is my mother's father. And trying to research my grandmother and figure out, I was like, wait, okay, so she got married in May of 1952, but she had my uncle in January 1953. That means she was pregnant already. So, looking into that and then trying to understand also why my grandmother divorced my grandfather after like 18 months. And she remarried, who I knew, the man I was raised with as my grandfather, and she had 6 more children with him. And just through the research and then talking to my mother, there was a lot of things that was happening with my mother and my grandmother that, my mother didn't really want to reveal. And she's, after a while, she opened up and told me things about, her hearing that her father wasn't her father. And so I was like, well, let me get into Ancestry. Let me see if I can figure this out. And last month, January, I found my half aunt. So the daughter of my grandfather. And because I thought there was no living relatives, I knew he was deceased. And so when I found her, she's only 3 years older than me. So we talked and had a good conversation. She saw my family tree on Ancestry, and I had him in the tree. And she was like, well, I wonder, is this really her? But she knew he had a first wife, and he had 2 children, and his wife's name and his daughter's name was the same. So she was like, this is probably the right person. So we've been in contact, and she had already done an Ancestry test. So then I was like, okay, cool, because I was going to ask her to do one. And then I paid for my mom to have an Ancestry test, and my cousin, who is the son of my uncle. Mm-hmm. And so both of my uncle and my mother have the same father. So I was hoping I would get those results before I came on the show, but they have the results. So Ancestry has their specimen or whatever. And so it'll still be a few more weeks before I sort of have receipts on, like, is he really their father, or is he not? Or is he one of their father and not the other one? So, and that's a lot. That's a lot there.
Well, thanks for sharing that. We're going to take a station break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about those challenges.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
We often want to understand what are the tools that we can use to help us as we're dealing with these challenges. We're going through all of this anguish. We're in the middle of an obstacle. What can we do? Some people, they like to write. I encourage you to keep a journal. Let the energies of the things that are on the inside come through your hands onto that piece of paper and allow others to learn. Some people may really want to meditate. It's really about being calm and thinking and letting that energy guide you. And that can help you to overcome all of the anguish that you may be feeling when you're going through such a challenge. And lastly, some people want to get into a position where they can listen. Some people want to listen to advice. They want to go to somebody that they can listen. And so remember that there's nothing wrong with reaching out to get that help. Find a therapist if you need it. It's not a bad word. Welcome back. So we were talking about ancestry and talking about our family history and secrets that we find out, as we're going through this process. So, Tiffany, you were talking about that as you found your half aunt and the understanding the differences of who was married to whom and whom had children, etc. and you said that you had some concerns about your mother. Do you still have those concerns? Are there still challenges that that you believe, or things that you think you don't know yet, other than the fact that you're waiting to find out if they're related from this result that's coming back?
I don't have as many concerns about my mother because we've spoken a lot about, when she agreed to do the DNA test, I said, well, how are you going to feel if it comes back that he's not your father? And she's like, well, we have more research to do. Then we got to find out who is. And the same with my cousin, because he was very reluctant to do the DNA test. He's like, I don't need them having my DNA and all that. I was like, I promise you we would delete it. I just need you to do it. I got a book coming out. I need to know, like, what's the truth, because me finishing the book is predicated on, like, which way am I going, right? Do I have a new aunt, or do I, is it something else? Right. And so the story is even deeper than just the grandfather, because then the question becomes, who is the grandfather? If the man that I know, whose name I have, Green, is not my biological grandfather, then who is? And I hope it is. I really do. But if it's not, then I have more search to do. And Ancestry could probably tell me very quickly, wait, where are these second cousins and these third cousins coming from? Because so many people have done these genetic tests at this point. So, but my mom is, I think my mom is glad I'm doing it, because for me, it was about helping her to heal, helping her to understand and forgive her mother, because something happened to her mother. That was the thing that I felt in my spirit, was like, well, she had a baby at 17 and 18, and she was married, and maybe she was forced to get married. Because back then there were not unwed
That's
mothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole lot there. And then when I had the opportunity to talk to my half aunt, I said, well, what did your dad tell you about his first wife? She was like, nothing. He would not tell her anything. And that, again, made me even more curious. I'm like, what are they hiding? Because they both took some secrets to their death, and I need to find out what it is. I really do. I mean, and we're doing our best to figure it out through, just Ancestry and things, but she's at a dead end because she doesn't have any other family and siblings. And I told her, we talked just a few days ago, because she told me her test results came in, and I told her, I said, it doesn't matter to me what it says. Your father was married to my grandmother. We're family no matter what. And she was like, oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And my mom has talked to her, and, so we're just slowly beginning to tell, like, my mom's other sisters. She has 5 sisters. Like, hey, we found, because they have different fathers. We found this, my mom's, half sister, and, we're just figuring things out, trying to figure it out, and I'm kind of the history keeper now of, like, all these stories.
How is the family accepting it as they're hearing as you're slowly telling them? How are they accepting the fact that this is going on?
It's challenging, because there were some things that happened between my grandmother and my mother, because my mom's the oldest and I'm the oldest, and, like, her younger siblings have no awareness of this, of what was happening and how my grandmother was treating my mother. And some of the abuse that my grandmother suffered under their father, that they didn't see that as they got older, and as, like, my grandmother and her second husband sort of went their separate ways, they didn't see that abuse that my mother saw, being the oldest. And so talking about that has been they're like, what you talking about? Like, we don't know nothing about that. I'm like, you wouldn't, because you were like a baby. But it's my mother's truth, right? And I really am writing the book for her, right? So that she can heal, and also to have a better legacy of my grandmother, because people are not just mean or mean-spirited, just automatically. Like, stuff happens to people. And so me also trying to figure out what happened to her, what made her the type of person that she became, that I remember, because she raised my mom. I lived with her Monday through Friday, and my mom picked me up on a weekend. So I got to experience a lot of different sides of her. And sometimes, many people would say she was mean, but I don't want that to be her legacy, right? I want to figure out any way I can what happened to her, as a young girl. What happened to her. And so there's way more to that I can't really talk all about we'll see what the genetic tests say. And then that may kind of lead me back to some initial suspicions that I have about how she was raised and where she was raised and what may have happened to her.
So how are you going to feel if the test comes back and the grandfather you knew really isn't your there's no relation? How are you going to feel?
I try to go down both roads. If he's not my grandfather, the man who I like, the Mr. Green, because I still have the Green name, of course, I'm going to be even more curious. I'm going to I want to figure out, like, who is then, right? And the answer to that question it wouldn't be super surprising, because there's some other history and connection to, like, my great-great aunt related to the Nation of Islam and how she raised my grandmother. It wouldn't be too surprising. It would be disturbing, but not surprising. Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to get yourself to a point where you're coming to terms with what that looks like.
Yeah.
In terms of moving forward. That's very interesting. We're going to take a station break. And when we come back, we're going to also see if our audience has a comment or a question. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
We often want to understand what are the tools that we can use to help us as we're dealing with these challenges. We're going through all of this anguish. We're in the middle of an obstacle. What can we do? Some people, they like to write. I encourage you to keep a journal. Let the energies of the things that are on the inside come through your hands onto that piece of paper and allow others to learn. Some people may really want to meditate. It's really about being calm and thinking and letting that energy guide you. And that can help you to overcome all of the anguish that you may be feeling when you're going through such a challenge. And lastly, some people want to get into a position where they can listen. Some people want to listen to advice. They want to go to somebody that they can listen. And so remember that there's nothing wrong with reaching out to get that help. Find a therapist if you need it. It's not a bad word. Welcome back. This has been very interesting, as we take time to learn our history. And one of the things that I really admire about you, Tiffany, is that you're doing something to help your mother heal. You're doing something for someone else. You're a researcher, you have curiosity, you want to learn, you want to understand, but you're doing something that will allow your mother to get to a point where she has even more identity to know who she is and why. Mm-hmm. And so I really commend you for doing that, because it takes a lot of guts. It takes courage. It takes the ability to want to address your family and the issues that they went through and help them cope with what they're experiencing and what's going to happen, because we don't know what emotion she's going to go through when she finds out, right? And so we got it, getting prepared for that, you know, and getting ourselves in the mindset. You know, I really have to help her, but I also, you know, and just as, you know, for you, thinking about how you're feeling and your emotions and dealing with that, and understanding that you may think, okay, I just found out, but what am I going to do if I can't handle this? And how am I going to help my mom if that happens, and being prepared for that. So I admire the fact that you're looking at both of those situations, you know, as we're moving forward, because let's face it, every family has secrets. Every family has something that they don't talk about, either in previous generations, it can be current. There's always things that we don't talk about. And a lot of times we don't talk about them because we're embarrassed. You know, there's guilt, or during those times when it happened, it was something that wasn't discussed, so we didn't bring it with us. And so there are a lot of secrets that go to people's graves, you know, in terms of what happened. So the fact that you're doing this, but you're doing it for a cause, to help your mother heal, and then to change the legacy of your grandmother, so that you really understand the roots of why. You know, is very, very interesting, and I admire you for that. And I can't wait to hear, you know, you'll have to keep us posted.
I will.
And wait to hear how things are going, and let us know when the book comes out so we can learn more about this family history. Let's see if we have a question from the audience.
Hi, I think your research is very interesting, and I'd like to get started as well with myself and looking into my family history. How long does the process take, and do you just go focus on Ancestry.com, or are there other resources that you use as well?
Well, for me, Ancestry has been a winding road. So I started with Ancestry, and I really hit like a lot of dead ends, because you need information. You need names, you need birth dates, you need, you know, at least the state, the city where a particular family member may, you know, if you're looking, say your dad's family, right? You got to start somewhere, and so Ancestry has been my primary source right now, which has been pretty amazing because it gives me hints and all types of stuff. And then but I've also been talking to elder family members, trying to understand, like, okay, where were they? Okay, y'all were from Alabama, then y'all some moved to Detroit, some moved to Ohio, you know, trying to follow the lines. And it's been really interesting, because sometimes you find one person who may be, you know, a current person, and you hit a dead end somewhere. But then you're like, oh, wait, I've got this new piece of information. Then that connects me to somebody else. And the answer, she's like, hey, you have a hint. You know, it might show you another census record. And the thing I've learned with the census records is to really open them up, to, you know, look at the one they have highlighted, but then I also look at who's else in that block, on that street, right? And especially when you go back to in the South, in the like 1910, 1920 census, a lot of times I've been finding, you know, you got the black family, and then you look a few lines up, oh, so white people with the same name. Okay. So, you know, you could find a lot about your family just from kind of digging through those census records. I'm considering hiring Ancestry to do more research for me, because we're in COVID. I can't like fly to Detroit, fly to Chicago, go to the libraries, and get a lot of that information. So, you know, that's something my husband and I got a quote, and I was like, okay, all right. But then at the time that I got the quote from Ancestry, I didn't even have as many people in the tree that I have now. So it would be less work for them, but more focused work, especially on the archives and the property that my great-great-aunt owned, and the buildings, and, you know, all of those types of things that I'm really looking for more deeper assistance in terms of the stories.
Wow. So you heard it here that if you're looking for trying to find your family, you're looking for trying to find out what's actually going on, there are tools out there. I didn't know that Ancestry.com, you could hire them. Wow, what a great resource that you can outsource to be able to get some of these things done. I have really, really enjoyed this episode. Can you all join me in thanking my guests today? It's really interesting. Curiosity killed the cat, but that's a good thing. It allows us the opportunity to do research. It allows us to find out where we came from, the challenges that we faced, the mental, emotional, and anguish that we've gone through. I hope you have enjoyed as much as I have. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And remember, for every hidden story that you tell, it is a secret that gives you freedom. See you soon.